Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers, and welcome to the first edition of a 10-part series of Mums at Work. My name is Rawa.
And my name is Raghad, and in this series we'll be talking about going back to work and our experiences of how we manage to do that with our children, our homes, and our roles at work, inshallah.
So Raghad, I'll start by asking you, when do you think is the right time for a mum to go back to work?
I think there shouldn't be a right time to go back to work. I think the right time is when it's right for you.
Definitely.
And what works for you and for your children.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's kind of a dynamic. It's your children, yourself, and your job as what role you're doing and your hours and things like that.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I think, is when your child is ready. Some children are just, you know, they're just, mashallah, they're just good. They sleep through the night. They're bottle fed. They're okay with other people looking after them. They don't have the social anxiety. And then sometimes you get children who, you know, are almost 2 and still can't sleep through the night and still giving the mum, you know, a hard time or sleepless nights, have issues with feeding, have issues with attachment. Then in that case, it'll be much more difficult for the mum to go back to work earlier. And that's what causes, you know, feelings of anxiety, feelings of guilt, and that's what we really don't want to try to avoid.
Great point, Raghad, actually. And it's not just about kids being ready. You have to also go back to work when you're ready. And that's okay. You might never be ready to go back into work, or you might not even want to go back to work. Your life is your kids and your home, and your priority is your, you know, your family, and that's 100% fine, because
and that's
actually
what makes you happy, isn't it?
That's what makes you happy. And even now that I'm back at work, I can 100% say a stay-at-home mum is the hardest job in the world.
It's the hardest job, but it's the most fulfilling, and
Yeah.
it makes you, you know,
No,
very,
definitely.
very happy. And like, you know, like you were saying, if it makes you happy, that's the most important thing. Because as a mother, the mother's happiness, the mother's well-being is
Yeah.
the most important thing in the family. If the mother's unhappy, the mother's anxious and stressed, then that's going to affect the whole environment in the house,
No,
the whole
definitely.
dynamics.
And just see what works for you. So for me personally, I had a 8 to 9 year career break.
Wow.
So going back to work for me was, you know, it was a complete change for me, for my family. And I always said to them, I said, you are still my priority. So if my family life is going to get in the way, if my upbringing with my kids is going to get in the way, I will leave my job. And actually, day 2 into me working, you know, at the beginning when you're applying and you get accepted, you're kind of still in the whole excitement part of starting a job. But then when you start and you realize that somebody else is picking up your kids at this time, you get that 3 o'clock itch when school finishes. And then when you realize that you're not the one feeding them, you're not, you know, things have changed.
Yeah.
You know, you do get that mum guilt, and even going back to work, you know, you're not ready sometimes still, because you start work with this imposter syndrome where you think, okay, I don't feel like I can do this. So even for me personally, day 2 of going back into work, I wanted to quit. I was like, I can't do this. I want to be at home with my kids, and maybe I can't do this job. I've been out of work for so long. I don't think I can do it. You know, after a month, I felt the same. But actually, I think because it's such a big change in your life, and you know, if you're someone used to having always the house immaculate and clean, and kids are fed and changed and everything's perfect, you know, something's got to give, and that will affect your decision of whether you want to go back to work or not as well.
But it's the fact that you didn't give up. So when it got hard, it's really important, because in the beginning, when you first go back to work, it is a shock to the system. It's a shock to your whole family. And what you said is very nice, that you've told your family, you've explained to them that they are still number one. At the moment, you are going to maybe work a little bit harder, because at the beginning, you're still kind of learning as well. Yeah. You're still not used to the routine. You're still not used to the work itself. Like, subhanAllah, when you go to work the first couple of months, you're like, you know, you're just a fish out of water. You're so, you know, you're learning, and it takes longer to do things, and you might come back home and bring some work home with you, in fact. But then after a couple of months, it actually becomes second nature, and you kind of finish all your work, all what you need to do at work, and then you're home and you're fully there for your children. Yeah. So it's really also important to be patient and to explain to your family and to your children that, you know, this is just a short period of time. You are my number one.
And be patient to yourself.
My priority. And
be kind to yourself.
And be kind to yourself.
Because we always say ourselves high expectations. You know, we want to do everything. We want to be the perfect mum, the perfect person at work, the perfect wife, you know, the perfect everything. And something will give when you go back to work. Things like, you know, you're going to have to make sacrifices, and you're going to have to not care that the cushion is not put in the right way.
Yeah, no, we always say you can't be the perfect mum and the perfect employee and the perfect mum. No. But actually, you can. But it's just that we just have to lower the bar.
Lower the bar,
you know, our
and
idea
it takes
of
time.
perfection, our idea of perfection is not someone else's idea of perfection. You were saying that the house has to be immaculate and everything has to be, you know, your kids, you have to feed them. Whereas actually, no, that's not the ideal perfection.
No.
Perfection is, you know, having a functional home, having a safe home, having a home where a mother is working to give a good example to her children. Because, you know, they say that statistics show that actually daughters of mothers who work go on to have better careers, go on to have better jobs, and you know, want to strive and become
because
like
they
the
look
mother.
up to their mums, don't
Exactly.
they? You become
And
a role model.
Yeah, and the sons
100%.
of working mums grow up to be more independent, grow up to be more helpful with their families, grow up wanting to spend more time with their children, an average of 90% more, 90 minutes more with their families than as the son of a non-working mum. So actually, what our idea of perfection is just what's implanted in your mind.
Yeah.
But you can still be that. You can still feed them nutritious food, and you know what? You don't have to feed them yourself all the time. Giving your children that independence, giving your children that time to actually go out and find something to eat, and maybe even put something together. You can like get the food together, but ask them to put it together.
Yes.
That is so stimulating for their mind. That gets them ready for the real world.
Definitely.
You know, they're just you're preparing them for the what you know, how life is going to be anyway.
No, I think definitely. I think for me personally, I think when I went back into work, my kids straight away became a lot more independent.
Different,
You know, as a you know, before it was like it was natural for me to be doing everything for them, but now I needed the help. I needed the help from them to help me help them.
But are you actually benefiting them when you're doing everything for them?
No, you're actually
What are they learning?
Yeah.
Are they actually learning any skills? Any just you know, that being alone, learning to be alone is such an amazing skill.
Definitely.
You know, learning to actually do things on your own and not depending on others. It's such an important skill that us mothers forget, and we have that, you know, the guilt of, oh, I'm not doing enough for them. So when you went back to work, did you find that you went back to the same job role, same working hours, or did you find that you actually had to tweak things, and even to the extent of lowering the bar, or, you know, getting paid less even, or working less hours just to make your family happy?
So no, actually, I was very lucky. I got back into a really good role and a really good job. But I think my biggest fear was having that work-life balance, because I know that when I worked before having kids, it was hard for me to have a work-life balance. Career took over. So for me, having a family, it was really important that I have that. So I think it's important in that instance, obviously being out of work for so long, I had to prove myself. But after I did, you know, I was comfortable enough to establish a relationship with my line manager and discuss, you know, working from home 1 day a week, you know, and other days if my kids had parents' evenings, etc. I think, especially in the current climate now, it's a lot easier to have that work-life balance and work from home. I think businesses have been a lot more understanding.
You mentioned a really good point when you just said that now you have set times for your work, whereas before you had the children, you were working more, and you were maybe working over than what you should be doing. So did you think the fact that you've had children, or that we've had children, we actually have to set boundaries with our manager or boundaries with our work, that we, you know what, we can only do this, that's what we can do because we have other priorities and other things going on.
It's not boundaries, it's more priorities. You know what's important, and your priority is your family. That's it. You know, and work will not get in the way of that.
Yeah, but I think just having a family just sets those boundaries at work as well, because then they know that they can't really intrude it on your family life. Yeah. Whereas someone who maybe doesn't have a family, they know that this person is more free. Let's just give him this extra little, you know, job, this extra task,
that's true.
because they have the time. But this one, no, we can't, because she's a mum, and we understand that she has her priorities. Home is number one. What she does here at work is number two.
Yeah. And the thing with me as well is I was the first one out the door. 5:30 on the door, I'm running back to my kids. They know, and maybe it was frowned upon, I don't know, but do I care? No, I don't, because it will always be priority is my kids.
Yeah.
So
no, with
it's
me,
important
I had
to they know that. That's like your employer knows that, I think. Yeah.
So with me, I had to lower the bar, because my working hours, with what I was doing before having children, was, you know, it was very long and it was very demanding. So then I started working with schools, like primary schools, even nurseries. Even though I was qualified for secondary school, I even worked at a nursery at some point, just so I can make it work for my family, or even take my child with me to the nursery, just so I don't have to spend, you know, so much time away from the family. So I did have to lower the bar, but it didn't affect me in a bad way. In fact, it made me happier because I know that I was still being stimulated. I was still getting that cerebral stimulation from work, getting that
using your brain. It's
using my brain.
So important.
Exactly. And yet still being able to make it work with my family, being a mum, and not having that detachment anxiety.
Yes, definitely. Any regrets?
No, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Allah's been amazing, and trusting Allah has helped tremendously. SubhanAllah, like when you trust Allah and you it doesn't shift the problem, it just makes it doesn't move the mountain, but it just makes climbing that mountain easier. Yeah. So as long as you
He's the best of planners, so He's planned that your life is meant to go this way.
And I've had a really nice quote saying that, if you have a dream, trust that it's been put in your mind because Allah has put it there for you. Yeah. So, whenever you have a dream, when you want to be ambitious, just say, you know what? Allah's going to help me do this because He's put that idea in my mind.
Yeah, perfect.
Alhamdulillah.
Interesting points, Raghad. So now we're going to take a short 5-minute break, but we've got our lovely friend Isra who will be discussing how to forgive yourself. Stay tuned.
Guilt and shame is something that we see so common amongst women, especially with mums. And shame and guilt, there's something about these two feelings. They are really low energy feelings that can be quite destructive for the self and for those people that are around you. And it's something that we see in society because of the pressure sometimes that society puts on women, or sometimes even the pressure that women put on themselves or between each other. The pressure to become the perfect mum, the perfect wife, the perfect daughter, the perfect employee, the perfect entrepreneur, to almost be perfect in whatever role that we find ourselves in. And let's face it, there is no such thing as perfection, so that's a goal that's never actually reached. And sometimes what we see is these kind of feelings, they will sort of manifest themselves and project themselves in different ways for different people. So it's important to recognize how it's manifesting for you and what effect it's having on you and your own life and the people around you. So sometimes it projects itself or manifests itself through anger, resentment, depression even, or anxiety, because you're almost always living either in the past or feeling guilty about something that's happened in the past. One of the really important strategies to actually overcome these things, and I'll mention probably 5 things that can be really helpful for you to go home with and really start to practice. But it's really important to start to really forgive yourself of past events, to actually heal through whatever has happened for your own self and for your children and for your family and society as a whole. To really develop that sense of healing so that you look after your own well-being and those around you. Because the risk of not doing so, of not healing, of not forgiving, will have a detrimental effect and a lasting effect on you. And almost these kind of effects starts to get passed down from one generation to another. That sense of that conditioning or the habit or the behavior of self-blame, of self-critique, of never being good enough, that gets passed down as well. So how do we actually forgive ourselves? How do we work on ourselves to really heal through whatever has happened in the past? Number 1, take ownership. Take ownership of whatever has happened, whether it's in the past, say 10 years ago, or if it's yesterday, something that has happened. Taking ownership doesn't mean start self-blaming and self-sabotaging yourself, but rather saying that I recognize that I've done something, I recognize my own shortcoming, and I realize that I'm never going to be perfect. And this event, whatever has happened, is a learning opportunity for me. It's a chance for me to really learn from it and grow from it and, develop through whatever has happened. The second thing that we can do, which is so important, it's not something I really focus on with so many of my own clients, and that's grounding yourself. Grounding yourself on 3 levels: physically, mentally, and spiritually. And if I just tackle the spiritual aspect of grounding, we know, especially as Muslims, that forgiveness is such a big part of our religion, and we know that Allah is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Ghaffar, that He's merciful, that He's forgiving. So when we connect with our soul, when we connect to Allah on a much deeper spiritual level, we realize that Allah is all forgiving. So it's okay for me to actually then to forgive myself and forgive other people. So grounding yourself on a spiritual level is really rewarding. Grounding yourself on a mental level, physical level is really rewarding, and it kind of almost changes your whole outlook of how you view mistakes or shortcomings in your life. The third thing, which is really important, when we have done something, either if it's, especially if it's to somebody else, and we've hurt someone else, even if it's our children, you know, or our parents, or someone in society, friends, is to actually apologize, you know, say sorry for what you've done, for what you've done, take ownership of that action and apologize. But what's really important is not to get stuck in the other side of things, which is forgiveness. Because realizing that forgiveness isn't up to you, that's not part of you, you don't have control over that. What you do have control over is your own actions, your own ownership, your own, you know, apology, asking for forgiveness. It's up to the other person then to forgive or not. So that's not up to us, and we can't really hold on to that or get stuck in that. The fourth thing that we can do is actually affirm. Whenever we find ourselves, remembering that self-blame and guilt and shame is a habit, it's a behavioral habit that we have built. And whenever we find we're living in the past, we're taking ourselves back into the past to remember what's happened, and that makes us feel really bad, is to actually work through affirmations. Say, I choose to forgive myself. I choose to recognize and forgive and learn from whatever has happened. The last thing I would say is really to say to yourself, what are the learnings that I have from whatever has happened, and start to find some purpose in that. Because having the big why in your life of what is this, whatever I have done in my life, whatever my shortcomings are, what have they taught me through this? What is my purpose behind this? What can I learn from this? And start to take action that has a big meaning to you, to really give you direction in your own life. And that will really help you to really heal and move away from whatever has happened, and really move forward in a very positive and healing way as well. Thank you.
So I'm not very good at forgiving myself. What about you, Raghad?
Well, forgiveness is not just about forgiving yourself for the wrongs that you've done. It's about giving yourself grace. So, you know, as we're talking about work, forgiving yourself for not being that perfect mum that you want to be, or perfect housewife that you want to be. Forgive yourself and say, you know what? Done is better than perfect. I've done all this today. I've achieved all this today, and I've spent this much time with my family and children.
Yeah.
That's fine. I forgive myself that I haven't spent 24 hours with them.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, that can be forgiveness. You don't have to have done something major to forgive yourself, or you don't have to feel guilty and then forgive yourself to feel unguilty. It starts off with little steps of just appreciating yourself and saying, I'm okay. I've done enough for today.
And that's actually related to, you know, when you're looking for a job and going back into work, you know, one of the biggest obstacles for me, and the biggest challenges I found, was finding the right people to look after my kids while I was at work. And I honestly, for me, in order for me to be comfortable with myself being at work, I had to find the right people. So how do you go about that?
This time when I went back to work, when my child was only 1 year old, and you know that is very difficult to leave your child with a childcare provider at that age, because they can't talk to you, they can't tell you what's going on. But the only way I was able to do that and able to trust someone is because I put her with the childcare provider that I was working with. As I mentioned earlier, I was working at a nursery where I was taking my baby with me, the previous one. So I had seen how she is around other children. I had seen how honest she is and how caring she is. So I was very happy to trust my daughter with her. Otherwise, you know, I don't think I'd be able to go back to work not knowing what's going on at a nursery.
Yes.
Or not, you know, being unsure or being worried. Because then how can you do well at work, or how can you succeed, or how can you succeed at work when at the back of your mind you've got something that's worrying you, something that's making you feel anxious? You know, when you go to work, you have to make sure that you are okay within yourself and everyone is okay for you to be able to do well.
And that starts with finding the right childcare provider for your kids. So for me personally, I remember at the time we looked into childcare websites, and obviously you're going to find a mixture of people that have put their CVs out there wanting to come and be a nanny for your kids. Obviously my kids are a bit older than yours, Raghad, so for me ideally I wanted a nanny that could come pick them up from school and come home with them and stay with them until I get there. I remember we did interview people at the time, and we were so close to saying yes to someone, but subhanallah, it just, something wasn't right. It didn't feel right. You know, saying to my husband, oh my God, this person's going to come into my home and be with my kids. I don't feel right. And I think one of the things that I didn't feel right about was the fact that maybe they were not Muslim. You know, I wanted somebody who was similar to us, I guess.
Yeah, has similar mindset.
Definitely. So I again, it was a matter of Allah was with me and pure luck that a friend of mine recommended somebody who was in the local area. And I went to visit her house, and I went to visit, so she would pick up my kids and take them with her to her house.
Isn't it?
It was, you know, she was the same as us. She was, you know, I saw how she brought up her kids. I saw her environment. She had the sajada out, you know. It's just little things like that.
Because children pick up those things.
Yes,
they pick up everything.
And I thought, wow, yes, this is perfect. This is where I want my kids to come.
So you trusted your gut, and that's the most important thing for us mums, is to trust our gut to go with our feelings. Because actually, like I mentioned just before, is that things are put in our minds or in our hearts by Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you trust Allah, then you are able to trust your gut, because you know that everything is there for a reason. So you didn't, you know, something didn't feel right, and Allah directed you to the right, you know, the right childcare provider. And if it wasn't for the right childcare provider, you probably wouldn't be able to go back to work.
I started work still not having found somebody. So that's another thing that, like, I would urge people is I hadn't found someone, so I had to rely on family at the time. And it's okay, rely on family. And I relied on friends as well, to be honest. So rely on family, rely on friends. Don't be ashamed to ask, because especially those, we mentioned earlier, those friends that, you know, have the same mindset as you, the friends that are also working, because they will definitely understand. So if they've got a holiday and you need someone to pick up your kids, do ask them. They will help, because they understand.
And you know what, statistics do show that about half of working mums do suffer anxiety alone, in silence, because of what you just mentioned, the shame or the, you know, the guilt that comes with asking people if they're for help, or even asking work colleagues, because shame comes from both sides. So you've got the shame from the mums that are stay-at-home mums, so you can't talk to them about your struggles, and then you've got the shame from your colleagues, because if you tell them that you've got a lot going on at home, then you're worried that they're going to judge you, or they're going to say,
they can't do your job properly.
She's not good enough, she can't do her job properly. So, you know, a lot of mums do struggle alone. So what you mentioned is reaching out and trying to find friends that are on the same journey as you.
Definitely.
You know, they'll understand you. Friends who are working, and that's our mums. Because, you know, like I said, working mums, colleagues alone who don't have children will never understand. Will never understand.
So true.
They'll just say, okay, if you have a family life, then just go and be with your family. But they'll never understand the joy that mothers can get from working. The stimulation that it gives us. Statistics show that 60% of working mums are happier working than being at home, because it just gives them that cerebral stimulation. It gives them that confidence that they're giving something back to society. They're doing something. They're making a difference. So people don't understand that. People just think that you can either be a mother or you can either be a working employee. And so it's so hard to make others understand that, you know, the joys of having both. You can have the best of both worlds. Do you think that?
Yes, definitely, 100%. And for me personally as well, it was a conversation piece going to work. I was able to come home and just speak to my husband about something completely unrelated to the mundane kind of, I cleaned today, I cooked today, that's all I did.
Do you
today.
like the sauce? I mean...
and we'll have another actually topic about reconnecting with our partners and stuff like that. But just, I feel like, you know, that's important to say that it was something else. It was nice to talk about something stimulating, like you said, you know, stimulate your mind, and to be able to talk about that with your husband. And even with your friends and family, you know, it's interesting when they know that you're doing something else, and for you as well.
But I mean, nonetheless, I think being a stay-at-home mum is the hardest job. For me personally,
of course it is.
I find it the hardest job. Just, you know, it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you to be at home and make sure that everyone is perfect. You're so giving. Actually, going to work is giving something to yourself. Is having your own time, is being your own person.
100%.
But when you're a stay-at-home mum, mashallah for those stay-at-home mums, you are completely and utterly selfless most of the time. And you've got to give it to them.
Selfless.
You've really got to. You know, I would never say that me being a working mum, I work harder or do more and better than a stay-at-home mum, because at the end of the day, I think every mum, no matter what her journey is, what the struggle is, you know, we are all trying to do an amazing job, and inshallah we are.
No, inshallah we are.
But staying at home, like for me personally, like we said, we like that stimulation, we like that, keeping our minds going. I like the, the adrenaline and the.
It's keeping busy, isn't it? Because when you're not busy with these things,
You'll be busy with
you'll
something
end
else.
up busy but with things that are just trivial, that cause problems for no reason, that are negative. That's what I found being at home.
Because your mind looks for something. Your mind looks for things, isn't it?
I start thinking about things that I don't need to think about, and looking for problems, and I don't know where it comes from, but I guess when you're at work and you're keeping your mind busy, you know, you don't have time for anything else, because then whatever free time you've got, that's down to what you've missed out on during the day. So
I don't
to be
think
with
you're
your
looking
kids
for
and
problems. You
family.
said you're looking. It's just that everything seems more exaggerated.
Yes.
Whereas when you're working, you just don't have time.
No, you don't have
You don't
time.
have time for those things. Like, you know what, I'll deal with this later. But when you're, when you're at home, you're like, oh my God, this is like really important. Or for me personally, like, you probably end up getting an earbud and cleaning the edges, because that seems like you're sitting at home, you can see it. But when you're at work, that's it. It's like, I'll do that next week.
I'll do that next
year.
year.
Next year. I'll do that in summer holidays, my half terms and things like that. But that will never come, because in the half term, you're going to want to spend that quality time with your children, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you touch upon the point of when you went back to work the first couple of weeks or days, you were worried that you were going to be, you're probably going to fail your family. Did your desire for success overpower your fear of failure? Because there's a quote that says your desire to succeed should overpower your fear of failure.
Yes, I think eventually it did. I think initially maybe no. But definitely I wanted to prove something for myself. I wanted to prove something for my family. I wanted to prove something for my kids.
Yeah.
I think eventually I did see the pride in them, in me.
Yeah.
When they mentioned, I heard them just having a conversation with their friends, and they mentioned my mum is at work, and and when they saw that I was able to provide for them in a way I couldn't before, just random little gifts here and there and stuff like that.
And you tell them. Do you tell them?
I tell them, I do. I say, if mummy wasn't working, I wouldn't be able to do this for you. So
that's what I do as well.
Yes, definitely, 100%. So, I think eventually that desire to succeed did overpower the fear of failure, 100%.
And the whole point of the desire to succeed, for me, it comes as a long-term thing, because when you first start work, your pay usually is a bit less. Or for me personally, I just started work and I've got still young children, so most of what I earn actually goes to childcare. But actually, when you want to look at the bigger picture, you want to look at the future of your success. They're not going to be babies forever. What you're paying for this childcare this year is not going to be the same next year. So you try to look at the long run, or the long-term picture of the success. Success doesn't just come overnight.
No.
Success
You have
is
to
a work
work
in
for it.
progress.
Yes.
So sometimes you say, I'm going to stay at home for 8 years because of the childcare, because of this. But then when you go back in 8 years' time, you might not have the experience that you've had for the past
life
8
skills.
years.
I gained
life
skills.
skills.
Yep,
So
100%.
sometimes you have to look at what's going to happen in a few years' time. And that success, that final goal, is the important thing, I think, as a mum. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Well done, Raghad. You're doing great as a working mum.
Well done, Rawa, and well done to all the mums. I think we're all doing the best we can. There is no handbook, but we trust Allah. And through dua, it makes it easier, inshallah. And may Allah protect all our children and our families, and hopefully give us the success that we all crave.
And that brings us to the end of our first episode of Mums at Work. Please tune in next time.